I'm here.
Well, hello everybody. George here with Kilohearts on an auspicious and exciting day. I say that every time, but that's because I live stream on auspicious and exciting days, and only auspicious and exciting days. Welcome. It's time to talk about Convolver, the brand new plugin from Kilohearts. And I have to say, I'm delighted to be able to show it to you. It's been a long time in the works. Many of you will know what a convolution plugin does, more or less. Many of you will have used them before. In case you don't know, I'll explain it to you. What a convolution plugin does is it takes your audio signal, whatever it might be, a bass or a guitar or some drums, and it uses a short piece of audio called an impulse response to create the sense that that sound is in another space, or to process it through another sound. I know that sounds a little weird. It's a mathematical process, I understand. I'm not a mathematician, nor a programmer. I'm a musician. But trust me, the clever guys at the office have told me it's a mathematical process that kind of multiplies, roughly, one signal by the other to produce an interesting and exciting result. So the thing that it's most known for, I would say, is reverb, convolution reverb you might have heard of. Or used in the past. The reason that it's so effective for this is it allows you to make the sounds of real reverbs from real life come to life in your DAW. So let's take a look, for example, at this xylophone sound I have here in Phase Plant. Now let's listen to it going ahead. I've actually got a couple of convolvers on this sound. Let's remove that one for the moment. This one here says York Minster on it. Now, for those of you who don't know, York Minster is a big church in England, where I come from, in fact. Not York specifically, but from England. And in that church, somebody went and made a very loud noise. And this waveform you're seeing here is the resulting reverb tail of that noise. That's the impulse response, the response to a noise impulse, which is being used to convolve a result out of the input sound. The input is just this. If you've been paying attention to our sound design snacks, you'll have heard roughly that sound before. And what we're doing is using that sound to shape this sound and give you the sound of the reverb from York Minster, the real world sound of that reverb. So I'm sure this is no news to anybody, but that's what a convolver does. And it's very exciting because it allows you to mimic the behavior of real world systems like spaces, real reverbs, but also like microphones. That's what this one here is. It's mimicking the interaction of the sound with a type of microphone. We've got a list of different microphones here. And that's a slightly more subtle difference, but there's all kinds of different effects that you can cause. Depending on the microphone that you are mimicking via convolution. So we've got microphones, we've got reverbs, but that's not all you can do with a good convolver. We're going to get into some of the more esoteric uses of a convolver in a moment, but let me just talk you through the interface here. In fact, what I'll do is I'll take these off and I'll show you the standalone plugin. This is obviously the snap-in version, which can be loaded in, like all of our other effects, into our hosts, Phase Plant synthesizer, but also Snap Heap, the effects processor that allows you to process in serial or in parallel. So you could have a convolver on one half of your signal doing the microphone large membrane, and on another half you could have a completely different convolver, maybe mimicking a filter of some kind, for example, and use this setup in that way. But let's look at some of the other things that you can do with Convolver. So I'm just going to open that up as a standalone there. Did I just accidentally open Photoshop? I think I did. Exciting stuff. So in the standalone plugin, yeah, there it is. You have a little window there where you can click to open up the factory impulse responses. And by the way, if you have questions, do ask them in the comments. I think a couple of my colleagues are in there chatting away and answering a few thoughts. So please get your questions in there. We're going to be speaking in a moment to Linus, who did some of the impulse responses himself and also curated this collection to make sure that it covered all the bases without being too confusing and outlandish. I'll bring Linus in on a voice call in just a second, but let's take a look at some of these different categories here. So Spaces Real is, as I say, the real world reverbs that are imitated here. Let's take a little listen to a few of those. So without anything on it, sounds like this. That York Minster there is the first one. Small control room. So obviously you can get these real lush reverb sounds. You can also get bizarre and unusual artificial or experimental reverb sounds. But besides these reverby things, you can have guitar cabinets. Now, I wanted to show you a bit of guitar. Let me just pop this onto a different track again. I've got a little bit of guitar here. Let's just take a listen to the track. And there's something a bit interesting going on with the guitar here. Another famous use for convolution is that you can build a real-world guitar rig sound by using the convolution to mimic the amp's cabinet response. So what I've got going on here is a kind of amplifier section followed by a convolver doing a cabinet, an impulse response from a cabinet. And there's, again, a bunch of different options here which we feel cover some of the bases. And I should mention also that you can load your own impulse responses into Convolver as audio. You can either drag and drop them into this window here, or you can place the audio files into the relevant folder here to make your own exciting and intriguing impulse response come to life in there. But what I've got going on, let me play you a before and after, and I'll really go all the way before because I've got a little reverb on the end there as well. You've got the sort of direct in guitar sound. Then I've added some distortion here, which is like the kind of preamp there, but at the moment we've got no cabinet, so it sounds a little bit dry and a little bit artificial. And that's where the convolver comes in. And if we cycle through a few options, you can really hear it's got a lot of power to shape your sound. And then I've spaced it out with the Haas and added a reverb convolution at the end, a clappy. But again, we could choose anything else we want. Let me talk you through a few of the individual features of our convolver plugin here, you're able to play with the length of the sample, the impulse response, by stretching, so you could make a longer sound. In fact, let's do this with the reverb because it'll be a bit more obvious. So this reverb at the end, we have making the following sound. And if I stretch it out, we can make a much longer tail, of course. We can also adjust the tone of the resulting sound, make it very dark, make it very bright. We can feed the processed output back into the convolution engine, as it says there. And the impact that has is varied depending on the particular impulse response. We might hear it a bit more strongly on the cab response here. Yeah, you can hear it feeding back there. And other things you can do are trim the impulse response. And indeed fade in and out so that the sound smoothly arrives or fades away. You can add a pre-delay, either freely or in sync with the track. And of course, in combination with the delay, that can be pretty interesting. So, a ton of stuff you can do, a lot of power with this thing. And I just wanted to show you a couple of other little pieces on the drum sounds in this track, because the Convolver really can be used anywhere to bring life and reality to a sound, make it sort of feel like it's in the real world. I've got some sort of 808 drum sounds here. And I wanted to do different things to the kick and snare, just to show you the variety of stuff you can achieve. Let's take Convolver and put it on the kick, and we'll run it through a kind of a bass cabinet here. So before, a little thin, and give it a heavy bottom. I found this was also, the bass cabinet's also useful for tying my two bass sounds together, just to go off on a random tangent here. I've got two separate synth basses contributing to the pulsing bass sound. And I found that running those through a bass cabinet response has a really positive effect on the kind of blend and overall sound. And then of course you can mix some of that dry signal back in, adjust your tone. And suddenly you've got a much tighter track there. So, back to the guitar. No, sorry, we were working on the kick and the snare, weren't we? So yeah, the kick sounds a lot beefier. And the snare, I wanted to add a plate reverb to, because there's a really nice one in the content bank, in the factory bank there. So that's under Space's artificial digital snare plate. And if we blend that back, lovely and smooth and sweet. And as I say, we can tighten it right up with the stretch, or we can lengthen it out. Make it a little otherworldly, perhaps. Very versatile. Let's put these things back where I found them. And we've got a nice lush reverb there. So as you can see, a bunch of fun stuff, ton of fun stuff you can do with a good convolver, and that's what this is. It's also very versatile, of course, because it can be combined, like all of our other products, in our host plugins. So let's say you put a snap heap in there, you can do pretty much anything in combination with anything else. So if you wanted to build a reverb that was responsive to a sidechain compressor, for example, you could do that. You could pop in a compressor and convolver after it, and so on and so forth. You can add distortion and build a guitar rack right in here. You can combine two impulse responses in parallel to create a kind of biamping situation. You could work in multipass to biamp a bass guitar, for example, by frequency content. Give it a bass cabinet for the low end, and the high end can be taken care of with a smaller guitar cab kind of affair. So a ton of different things you could do. At this point, though, I think the best thing to do would be to hear from Linus Berglund, who did a lot of work figuring out which of the wonderful impulse responses contributed by our community should be the major players in our factory content bank here. There's 300 or more excellent sounds, and I wonder if he's on the line, if he'll tell us a little bit about what thought went into choosing the right ones, refining the collection to make sure that the complete possibility range was represented here. Are you there, Linus? Can you hear me?
Hello, I'm here.
Yeah, there you are. So maybe you've just got a few thoughts for the listeners at home about the Convolver factory content bank, the impulse responses that are available. What were the decisions that you made in refining and collecting these awesome impulse responses? What makes a really good impulse response?
Well, we got so many submissions from the community, including some I see in the comments here, actually. Let's see. We have Navi here. Hi, Navi. Navi actually did, I think, like half of the included impulse responses, and the rest, from other fantastic authors. And what I wanted to do was, as you said, cover all the bases, and especially, getting a bunch of authors in there with their own ideas and approaches to IR creation. Let's see, which ones do we have? Yeah, so we have, I think, 307. And I think they cover a great variety of things, as you can probably see with the categories themselves. And as you have walked through already, I'm not sure what to say about them. I think they kind of speak for themselves. But I think as this is a convolver within our ecosystem and not just a convolver, I think like the more creative sides of it really shine with the synthetic folder, especially, which is kind of simple, but with the controls, with the pitching, like the stretching and reversing and stuff like that, along with making your own complex setup and multipass and snappy. There's so much you can do,
Yeah. Should we just try something out with these, Linus? Maybe I can load those up onto that fake xylophone noise.
Yeah.
Let me just take these away for a second. And if I open up the standalone here, we can come into synthetic and open up. For example, I thought the chromatic saws were an interesting little idea. Maybe you could tell me a thing or two about that.
Well, yeah. The idea is just having this cluster of waveforms. You can see there's a bunch of them in there, like 12, I think, which are just different chromatic clusters, like an entire octave of sol waves is the first one, and then you have stuff like additional sol waves put on top of that, tuned to octaves or harmonics, and then there's phase aligned and phase randomized versions of that as well.
Nice. Let's
and
try one of
they
these
sound
with
super
random.
weird. Yeah.
Oh, do you know what? I'm sorry, Linus. I'm we're playing the wrong sound here. There we are. That's the thing. I thought I wasn't doing something right.
Well, that's why we're live.
Yeah.
Do things wrong.
So that is changing from that sound to that sound. And that's the sound of that xylophone patch being filtered through, as it were, the sound that you have created. And it's just a very short collection, a cluster, as you say, of waveforms that impart a completely different set of tones to the original sound. It's really interesting. And as you say, if we stretch it out, we can really get crazy, right? And
yeah, I think it's really cool
because
sorry.
No, don't apologize. I'm playing over your interesting talking. So that's the exciting thing there. All sorts of wacky things there. I forgot to mention earlier on that there's some where are we in the delays section, was it? Oh no, I wanted to show off glitches in the, perhaps we could just talk about glitches for a second on the snare. I'm sorry to be jumping around so much, by the way. It's a very exciting plugin. So yeah, Linus, glitches, right? I want to know what's going on here, because I can get my head around the idea of an impulse response of a reverb in a church. What's the impulse response of a I don't know, a dying AI? What is that a recording of? I mean, maybe we should be asking Navi.
maybe we should. Yeah, it's just really a fun way to use the algorithms, I think. Like multiplying all of the input sample by all of the impulse response and getting like weird results from the common frequencies in both sounds.
Should we have a listen to it?
It's super weird. Yeah.
Without it, the snare sounds like this. It's a snare, and with it, I mean, being as I am incredibly childish, I could just play with that for quite a long time, I reckon. So, only one more question before I let you go, Linus, which is, obviously there were an awful lot of impulse responses to choose from here. Our wonderful friends in the Discord community and in our other various groups submitted their ideas and their recordings. So how did you narrow down? What were your main concerns in terms of making sure that this was complete and representative without being overwhelming?
That's a very good question, and to some degree, I think that overestimates the question overestimates my ability to choose them. I chose the one that I like the most and the ones that I think will be most useful for most people, and showing off the Convolver without being too, how do you say it? Like, you still have these categories, and many of the impulse responses fit neatly into one of the categories. So like, yeah, I'm not sure. I just did it for a long time, and it's hard to remove so many fantastic impulse responses, but I think what we had to begin with would have been overwhelming.
Yeah, one thing I'm aware of is that let's take guitar cabinets for a moment, because I play a bit of guitar. I've used guitar cabinet impulse responses before, and one thing you can do when you're collecting them is you put a microphone in a certain place, record an impulse response, and then you want to get the sound of, oh, what would it sound like if I moved this microphone a fraction of a millimeter to the right? And then you end up with a folder of 1,000 different impulse responses before you've even thought it through. So part of the thing here, as far as I understand it, Linus, was that we did not want to offer overwhelming sort of anal levels of completeness in every single area, because we want people to be able to use this thing. So we chose some real sweet spots, some perfect, wonderful sounds. And then, of course, because it's set up in the way that it is, you can load in your own things. You can add in the areas that you really want to. You can add third-party impulse responses or your own impulse responses to your heart's content to flesh out the areas that are your particular fascination. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think this is just a starting point, and we can expand this further, and users can, you know, make their own sounds and import whatever they want. So I think we shouldn't put too much value in the existing sounds, because when it really gets interesting is when you take things into your own hands.
Yeah, we already had a colleague this morning trying it out for testing, saying that he was convolving a guitar loop with itself just to see what would happen. So there's really no end to what you can try. I wanted to read out a response from Navi Retlove. That dying AI was actually FM synth one-shot sound with normalized EQ to remove all peaks. And the point there is that, thanks very much for the feedback there, Navi, for letting us know. There's tons of different ways you can make impulse responses, and there's really no wrong way to do it. You can just read up and try things out, and you can create incredibly bizarre sounds in new ways using a tool like this. So I'm pretty excited, because one of my favorite ways to make music is just to fool around and tweak things and fiddle with things and see what happens. It's fun to be intentional sometimes, but sometimes it's fun to just fling stuff around and see what sticks on the canvas, you know? So wonderful. Hey, well, look, I want to say thanks very much to Linus for his hard work on all of this. I want to say well done to all these wonderful people who have submitted impulse responses, and thank you very much. And to all of you watching and listening at home, you just got to grab this thing and try it out. There's a free trial available. If you're a subscriber to Kilohearts, you're able to take advantage of this with no extra cost. It's included in the subscription, and it's very reasonably priced. And with an intro offer now, in case you aren't already a subscriber, you can go and pick it up and give it a real try. It's a fun thing. Any other thoughts, Linus?
Not really. I think you summed it up quite well.
Hey, fantastic. Well, look, I'll leave you all just with the thought that you can go to kilohearts.com and have a great time with this thing. We'll be back with more very, very soon. So thanks very much, Linus.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm just seeing how quick you are on that mute button. That's good work, mate.
It's what I do.
Yeah, terrific. And thanks very much, all of you at home. We'll be back soon. Go to kilohearts.com, get yourself a Convolver, and goodbye.